So community has absolutely always been a part of our business model. Bosses are the best. I will say it all day, every day. And what really is the magic of being boss is bringing bosses together to talk about business. So it's funny, I mentioned that, we have this sort of infinite possibility with business model. But if we really are precise about what it is that we do, who it is that we serve, and why it is that we exist, a community is our like hairdresserness.
Welcome to the Rooted in Community podcast. My name is Celia Coughlin-Surridge, and I'm here to bring authentic, community-focused conversations about online marketing to you on a bi-weekly basis. Let's face it, getting the word out about your nonprofit, service, or product is one of the first obstacles anyone faces when trying to grow their organization. Between all of the different social media platforms, opinions shared by influencers and podcasters, and the bells and whistles that are all screaming for your attention, a state of overwhelm seems right around the corner. Thankfully, it doesn't have to be that way. Grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and relax as we discuss online marketing tips, tricks, techniques, and strategies to grow your audience by providing value to those you serve. Today, I have the honor of talking about online communities with someone I consider to be my mentor, Emily Thompson. Emily is a longtime business coach and creative warrior, helping retailers, makers, coaches, and designers develop an online business model and grow their creative businesses. She is also the founder of Almanac Supply Co., a retail business that makes and curates products that help people connect with nature. I was introduced to Emily through her podcast, Being Boss, that she started with Kathleen Shannon, and I now have an opportunity to learn from her on a more intimate level through the online Being Boss community. In this discussion, we talk about her journey to open the Being Boss community and the key things you need to consider if an online community is something you want to create for your organization. Before we jump into my interview with Emily, I wanted to invite you to take advantage of a 60-day free trial of Constant Contact. Email marketing is more important than ever because email is the most direct way to reach your audience. But Constant Contact is more than just an email service provider. They can help you sell products, build a website, and make it easy for people to find you. Work smarter, not harder, and get 60 days free by signing up at constantcontact.ricpodcast.com. Emily, thank you so much for joining me on the Rooted in Community podcast.
Celia, I am pleased to be here. This is going to be the best, 30, 45 minutes of your life? Maybe, we'll see.
I am really super excited. I mean, as you know, we're going to talk about communities, online communities today in this episode. But as you know, in August of 2018, while I was on a family vacation, I used a bunch of Being Boss worksheets and started building my business based off of everything I had been learning from your podcast. And so the Rooted in Community podcast is a direct result from what you and Kathleen have done. And so I'm kind of like fangirling out a little bit right now, like, okay, wait a second. So two years ago, this wasn't even on my radar. And here I am. And I was just listening to you for several years, so this is just really exciting. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm just, excited.
Of course. And thank you so much for sharing that with me. I love hearing that. And I feel like that's also, yes, a bit of a testament. We were just talking about how many hours of podcasting that I have done, but like you did it.
Yes, you do the work is your mantra. And I believe, both myself and my mother, we have done the work. That is for sure. So for sure. I recently realized that I've picked up the mannerism for sure. And I believe that it may be from you. Also, amen. That's my Emily impersonation is amen.
I swear one day I'm just going to make merch with all these ridiculous things that I say. A little amen t-shirt and a for sure mug. I love it. So yes, you probably did pick that up from me for
Yes,
sure.
I
For
do believe
sure.
so. So yes, for my listeners who have no idea what I am talking about right now, Emily Thompson is the host of the Being Boss podcast and also the creator of the Being Boss community. And that's what we're here to talk about, which is an online community, if it's right for your organization, and how Emily built hers. And so, actually, really quickly, I just want to highlight too. I mean, you have Being Boss, but you also have 10 minutes to Being Boss, Making a Business, Being Boss mini episodes, and then and those are all of your podcasts going on, but you also have another company entirely called Almanac Supply Co. And you happen to be doing live Friday like shopping events on YouTube. And so you are one busy girl and you have been all over the internet. So you're a pro when it comes to this kind of stuff, aren't you?
Prolific. Pro is not necessarily professional because I'm definitely still making up a lot as I go. But prolific, absolutely. Yeah, I do a lot of podcasting and I love our crystal party shows that we're doing on YouTube on Fridays. I do have another company, but all of it is it's a structure that I've built for myself, right? Like people looking at that may think, "Oh my god, what is she doing?" Like I could never imagine like, having all of those things going on at once, but it's been, my little structure that I've been building slowly piece by piece for the past 10 years. So for me it just feels like it feels like I'm just getting started. Even if on the outside it looks as if I'm doing more than probably anyone should.
Yeah, well, I get it. I mean, you've been putting these pieces down for a while, and actually, I mean, that really takes us to the beginning of the Being Boss community is really the Being Boss podcast, which launched in January of 2015 with you and your business bestie, Kathleen Shannon. And I would love for our listeners to hear from you why you two decided to launch the podcast and what was your ultimate goal with it.
Such a good question. So we decided to launch the podcast because we wanted to create something together. Like if you really get down to sort of the creative roots of it, Kathleen and I really wanted to create something together. And this seemed like a fun thing to do. It was a podcast because it was just my idea to make it a podcast. Like literally nothing more grand than that. But we also were really inspired to do it in this platform because what we wanted to do really was share the conversations that we've been having amongst ourselves for years about what it was like to be a creative or what it was like to be creative business owners, creative entrepreneurs who are both building these separate businesses, but also kind of together, talking about it. And we found those conversations so valuable that we wanted to share them with other people because we thought they would find them valuable as well. This is also before there were podcasts for creative business owners. Right now, there are tons of them. There was nothing like what we were creating out there in the world at the time. So we jumped in and did it. But there is also very much so like a business purpose behind it, of course. We wanted to use the podcast as a marketing outlet for our individual businesses. So I was running a web, or I had built a web design agency. Kathleen was building a branding agency. And we wanted to get together and, yes, talk about our sort of journeys as creative business owners, but also infuse that very much so with our expertise in branding and websites, with the idea that our listeners would hopefully also want to hire us to do branding and websites for them. So it was many reasons, but I can really boil it down to we wanted to create something together. We wanted to share these conversations that we were finding very valuable, and we wanted to have a marketing outlet for our individual businesses.
Yeah, and I mean, you really went for it, right? You were the one that were like, I see this, I want to do it, and I'm just going to learn how to do it too. You were the one actually editing, and now you have Corey, right?
Yes. Yes. So, there weren't how to podcast courses
Right.
in 2015. Like there were none of these things. We had to figure it out as we went. And I am the techie one. So it was me figuring out. And yes, pretty soon I realized that I did not need to be editing my own podcast. And I ended up pulling my web developer from my web agency and have him do the editing. And he still does the editing to this day.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, iTunes promoted Being Boss fairly early on, which really helped skyrocket your popularity. As you grew, what were the different types of products you were offering to monetize the podcast?
So yes, we within the first couple of months we got in the new and noteworthy section of Apple. And back then too, I don't even know if there were any other podcast listening platforms. Like I think it was just Apple. Like this was really early. This was when people were really only listening to like Serial. This is back in the Serial days.
Yeah.
So yes, it was really early and that did very much so help. And because we had started this as a passion project for the purpose of our individual businesses, we did not go into being boss with a business plan. Like we just wanted to go, like if we ended up make or getting a sponsor, that would be amazing. But really we were doing it for the purpose of pushing people to our individual businesses. So within a couple of months though, we found out that there was actually potential within being boss, and that blew our minds. First of all, we never even thought that that would be a thing. Um, and so the first thing that we did was actually not even like a digital thing. And you would think podcasters like, oh, you make like a course or whatever. We decided to go on vacation. We decided to invite a whole bunch of bosses to New Orleans with us. And that actually became really our first. Actually, I think I might be lying as I'm saying this. I'm going to call that our first offering. I do think at about the same time that we decided to launch the first Being Boss vacation, we also decided to take two email courses. Kathleen and I had
Mm-hmm.
individual email courses and pull them together into one email course that you could buy on our site. That's funny. I haven't thought about that thing in years. So we didn't even create it from scratch. We took content we'd already created in our individual businesses, a branding email course and a website email course, and combined them into a branding and website email course by Being Boss.
Oh, wow.
So we did that. But really, it was events were sort of our first legit and ongoing product. At Being Boss, we love doing them. We've done several more since then. And then we have also we've done a couple other things as well. We have our CEO Day kit, which is
Mhm.
something we launched pretty early on, where we took some of the tools and tactics that we use to run our CEO days, the days where we like get in the driver's seat basically of our business. So that is it's kind of a course, but it's not even a course. It's a kit. Like it is different from a course. It is a kit of tools and exercises. And we've also had group coaching programs. We have the paid community now. We've done several things. We had a conference this past spring, and we've done other sorts of live virtual events. So we really sort of run the gamut. And that's been sort of the fun thing about starting a business on accident is that you don't go into it just going, I'm absolutely going to do this thing. This is the business model. Let's do it. We were really able to sort of maneuver into what it is that our audience wanted. And even though I'm presenting that as a pro, it was also very much so a con in
Mhm.
that we found ourselves. I mean, it's just difficult to be given a business and go like, okay, you can make money in any way that you want. That's sort of the nature of being boss. Like, how do you want to do it? There are so many options. It would have
Mhm.
been much easier if we'd gone into it as hairdressers, like obviously we have one thing we're going to do. We're going to do it great. So we've both enjoyed the pros and cons of having an sort of infinite possibilities in our business model. We've done lots of things along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, and that's where we really start kind of getting into also the online community aspect here, which is I know you started a Facebook group, which eventually grew to about 25,000 members before you closed in 2017. And we'll get to its closing in just a moment. But what was the reason for starting the Facebook group?
Like I said a minute ago, our people just wanted it, right? We were able to sort of answer the call of our audience. And at about the time that we had our first vacation, which was 10 months after we started the podcast. So, not even a year into it, we were there. So, within 3 or 4 months, we were selling tickets, right,
Mhm.
to our first vacation. And even that early, our people wanted to get together. Like they wanted to meet each other. They were so inspired by the relationship that Kathleen and I had and how much we were helping each other in our businesses and how those conversations were helping them in their businesses that they wanted to have that too. They wanted to find their business bestie. So pretty early on, and I can't remember exactly when it was in the timeline, but we started that Facebook group because our people wanted a place to connect with each other.
Yeah. And I know that you eventually happened to close that Facebook group. What was the reason behind that?
I hate Facebook. Pretty plain and simple. Whenever we got on Facebook, it was kind of the only option, right? Like
hmm
at that time, 2015-ish, there weren't all these other community platforms for you to put people on. And everyone was on, like everyone had a Facebook group. So we were like, okay, we'll also do a Facebook group. So we put it on there. But even in 2015, I was already pretty much off of Facebook. Was probably legit off of Facebook at that point. And so I did it grudgingly or
Yeah.
begrudgingly, is that how you say it? Got on Facebook or put the group on Facebook. It grew very quickly.
hmm
But also, if you ask anyone who was a part of especially those early days, it was the most amazing Facebook group on the planet. Like, and bosses are just really cool people, so when you get them together, really amazing things happen. There are people who still have very fond memories of that Facebook group, but whenever it grew to about 10 and then 15 and then 20,000 people, it got really noisy, really obnoxious. We ended up having to bring in volunteer moderators. We were having to, and when I say we, definitely not me. This was the moderators and Kathleen. That was more her project than mine.
hmm
Um, we're having to remove people from the group for saying dumb things, or having to remove posts and have people mad because like we removed their post. And what really took the cake though, because I feel like I was trying to talk the team and closing it down for probably a solid 12 to 18 months before they finally got on board with me.
Mm.
What really took the cake was whenever someone responded to one of our posts about the podcast. Like we had published a new episode, we put it in the community, or put it, yeah, in the community, in the group. And they were like, who are these people posting their podcast in here? And that's when we realized that the Facebook algorithm was not operating in our favor, really,
Right.
because it was just numbers at that point. It wasn't, there was still a core community in there, but the growth that was happening was not real. And so we realized that it was bringing in too many people who actually did not even know who Being Boss was or the community that they were entering. And that's when I finally had everyone on board to shut it down.
hmm Yeah, I can completely understand that. And I think that's really where deciding whether or not an online community is right for your community and how you're going to go about it is a really important decision. And, if you happen to have a community that's based in Facebook and you are going to have solid moderators, fantastic. But you ultimately decided to go with the Mighty Network platform, which I will ask you more about in just a minute. But you, as you were talking about, started offering lots of different products to monetize the podcast. You had the vacation, you eventually published a book with Kathleen, and you went on a tour. And I am going to guess that creating another community was something that you were probably thinking about while you were doing all of those things. Because I know the book tour was incredibly just labor intensive. So for you, how long had you actually been planning on a new online community for your followers?
I mean, we immediately tried to move people into a new community. So as soon as we shut down the Facebook group, we started, again, at that time, there wasn't a lot of options. So we started a Slack group, and that
Oh,
was not working. Almost immediately, we realized that was a bad idea. And we actually got on Mighty Network. At that point, it was called Mighty Bell, almost immediately after that failed Slack scenario. That was actually our group coaching. It was a at that point, it is what is now our CEO day kit. We would do a 1 day retreat where we would take them through a CEO day kit. And then it was 12 months of community membership. So again, we immediately went from the Slack into that situation. And then whenever that, we ended up shutting that down right about the time the book came out. And for Kathleen and I, we're going into this book tour. We don't have the time to bring in another cohort of our clubhouse bosses. That was the first iteration of the clubhouse. We didn't have the energy or the space to bring in another cohort, so we ended up letting that sort of, I guess, fizzle out, for lack of a better word. But after the book tour, Actually, I'm trying to recall some timelines, and I think we can all agree time is very fuzzy right now.
Yes.
After the book tour, I actually had my developer Corey, who is also a podcast editor. He started building a community platform on our website.
Hmm.
So, and that was probably 18 months before the current community situation launched.
Mhm.
So the entire time, the community has been a part of the plan. He built a platform on our website. We ended up going into some testing. We didn't love what was happening with the functionality of it, and then we just sort of put it to bed for a couple of months. So but within those couple of months, I was back on it. And then we were on Money Networks, we launched, and we have what we have now. So community has absolutely always been a part of our business model. Bosses are the best. I will say it all day, every day. And what really is the magic of being boss is bringing bosses together to talk about business. So it's funny, I mentioned that, we have this sort of infinite possibility with business model. But if we really are precise about what it is that we do, who it is that we serve, and why it is that we exist, a community is our like hairdresserness.
I wanted to take a quick break from this interview with Emily to tell you more about the Being Boss community and personally invite you to join us. I can't stress it enough. Being a member of the Being Boss community has elevated everything within my company as well as me professionally. Connecting with like-minded entrepreneurs gives me a sense of community that has helped me find the energy to push through heavy workloads. I can troubleshoot issues from technical to administrative, and best of all, I show up as a better person for my company and my team. This podcast is a perfect example of what I've been able to accomplish with the Being Boss community, and I cannot suggest becoming a part of your own professional online community enough. If you're interested in being surrounded by smart, creative bosses who are making money doing work they love, then go to beingboss.ricpodcast.com to learn more. I hope to see you there. For you, what was the most important feature or content that you wanted to be available for your subscribers of the community?
I think it's just easy access to each other. That was one of
Mhm.
the things that I really put into looking at the platform. So even though we are on Mighty Networks now, and it was because we had been on Mighty Bell in the past, which is the same thing, they just rebranded. Whenever looking through options, I still look through options, even though I ended up going with the same one that we had been on. But what I loved most about it was a couple of key little features that really was about you guys being able to connect with and find each other. So it's not me creating more stuff, it's not, more content, all of those things. It was, are you going to be able to communicate privately with each other? I love the feature in Mighty Networks that given not COVID, you can see who is physically, geographically close to you. So you can, message someone about a coffee date. Or if you're going to be traveling, you can, again, message someone to have a coffee date. Like that was really important to me to take those connections offline as well. So for me, it was just features around you all being able to connect with each other in a
Mm.
space that felt fun and vibrant and nothing like Facebook.
Right. Yeah. I think that's really where, you also get the opportunity to really nurture your followers and your audience to become even more involved with your platform. And then I know for you, it also helps with your other businesses and other podcasts, listenership increases by the more involved a person feels in your audience. And that's why any of our listeners today who are thinking about the possibility of doing their own online community, it is a really good opportunity for you to be able to directly communicate with your following and make them more involved in what you're doing. And honestly, I feel like the benefits on both sides are amazing. So that actually does bring me to a question though, is that, we, as you mentioned this year, many businesses had to pivot, that horrible word, due to the pandemic. And you definitely were not immune to that because you had a conference that you had planned earlier this year. Now, you launched the community in its form that we're currently in, I believe, late of 2019. You had your conference scheduled for spring. And you had to move the conference entirely online in the matter of weeks. And you started offering a Monday meetup call within the community as a way for your members to, communicate and feel like they had something other than just sitting at home and watching TV, which is actually now a permanent feature within the community. Could you tell us a little bit about your ongoing development and how it's actually changed due to the pandemic?
For sure. If I can use that Emily-ism there. Yes. So a couple of things. One of the things that I think came out of sort of quarantine and the pandemic and all of these things is it really highlighted for everyone what is most important and in our lives and in our businesses, and for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
Within the community, it was definitely for better. So the first Monday meetup that we did, actually, before I even go into that, I want to even back up to sort of an early answer to this question. Whenever I started the community, and because I've done this a couple of times, I went into it with the another Emilyism, and that is that I was going to test and change all along the way. Whenever
Mm-hmm.
I started the community, I knew that what I had started was nothing like it would be in 6 months or 12 months or 2 years. I would start with something and I would shift it all along the way. So that was just something that I launched the community knowing that I would do. Like, let's just start with the basics and then see what people are interested in, see what resonates, what doesn't resonate. And you've seen along the way, there have been things that I've added, there have been things that I've taken away because either they're working or they're not working, or I want to try something new out. Because I do see something like a community as a living and breathing organism that needs to be, nurtured, and things need to be released. Like, so not being rigid about it was always one of my sort of core beliefs going into it. I would do what needed to be done when and if it needed to be done. There would be no rigidity around the structure of the community. So there was that. I just went into the whole situation knowing that that's how I would tackle it. And then when it came to the Monday meetups, I had gone into it knowing in 6 months I would do a sort of recap and see what needed to be shift. But the pandemic started, 4 months later, whatever it may be. And I needed to make an immediate shift, which is also lack of rigidity. Like, I'm not going to wait 6 months. I'm going to do the thing whenever it needs to be done. I launched the Monday meetups as a way of like, oh, in the next couple of weeks while we're in quarantine, isn't that cute? Isn't
Yeah.
that adorable? Let's meet up on Mondays and just have a Zoom call. And this is also before everyone was like Zooming literally everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we started doing that, and that has become, you're right, a foundational part of what the community is. People have connected. People have made big moves in their businesses. Some of us are there every single week. Like, I notice when people aren't there, and I'm like, oh my God, we need to check in on so and so and see if they're okay, because it really has solidified that sense of community that I didn't even realize was missing until I had the opportunity to cultivate it.
Mm-hmm.
So that, we're going to do this for a couple of weeks while we're in quarantine, even though we're all still basically in quarantine. It will continue even when we're not in quarantine. So going at the community with that idea has been really important for me. And it's really allowed me to, again, test and change some things, whether it's more face to face things. And by face to face, I obviously mean Zoom, or if it's more content pieces, or if it's bringing in more experts, or, whatever it may be. I've gone into it with this understanding that the way I want to create this community is to watch and learn and listen and then shift things so that I can serve the community in whatever way it needs to at the time that it needs it.
Right. Yeah. And I actually joined, I think either like the week before or like the week that you started those Monday meetups, because that was just a couple of weeks after your conference, I believe. And I completely agree. I feel like it really solidified what the community is, because I definitely felt like it was an amazing resource as it was. But what struck me was you have a rule that if you join the community, you have to be active, and that if you become inactive after a certain amount of time, you're going to remove them from the community. And I personally feel that without having the opportunity to have built the relationships that I currently have through the Monday meetup calls, that at some point I would have been like, oh, okay, I got all the resources that I need. And I know that we have a monthly theme, but I could see that I could have eventually fallen off. But now, I mean, you've really brought this level of value that I haven't found with another community. I mean, because you have, just not only your resources, but you do have a monthly theme where, we talk about and we actually have, homework to do to improve our business. I know that I've made some major changes within Modern Roots Marketing based off of what we talked about. And I mean, this podcast is a direct result from the content creation month. I was like, I've got to create something valuable to provide our audience. And I've always wanted a podcast. So why not just do the work, So it's amazing the revelations you also come to when you have a group of people who are understanding where you're coming from and can speak your language. Because, I have my friends here and my husband supports me, but my mom and I are the two people driving the ship, right? I don't have a huge group of people. Even the young professional group that I'm a member of here in Sacramento are not filled with business owners and creative business owners. So obviously I can talk about how much I love the Being Boss community until I'm blue in the face. And that's why I felt like it would be great to pull you on, because you're actually getting ready to do a membership drive. Actually, when this episode goes live, I believe you will have just launched that membership drive. So I would love to ask you, you have a few open houses coming up. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you have planned, what those dates are, how people can get involved, et cetera?
Absolutely. And I will say too, though, what you're talking about finding your community and being able to make big moves in your business because of the people that you are being surrounded by, and the fact that they can speak your language and they're going to workshop things with you. Like, you are directly speaking to the power that we tapped into accidentally with this brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is why these things are what I have literally dedicated my career to, right? This bringing creative business owners together, because when you're in the same room, whether that be a Zoom room or a physical room, magic happens. Things get created, movements move. It's an amazing thing for me to watch. So I love that you are saying that, because you really are just directly pinpointing what I have found is the magic of being boss. So about these open houses though, I've sort of renamed them happy hours and showcases, because that's really what I feel they are, even more so than an open house. But they will have an open house quality. And my idea is to bring the community together, both like the legit and the Being Boss community members, as well as audience members who are interested in joining the community, bringing them together so that the audience can see the energy that is sparked whenever bosses get in the same space. So that was part of it. But I'm also inviting a couple of bosses to come on screen with me to share their stories, to showcase the work that's being done by members of the community. And some of it is a direct reflection of being members of the community, but also bosses are the coolest. So they're also just doing really amazing work that I want to showcase. So that's the showcase part, as well as sharing a little bit more about how the community works, all while having fun. Because I'm leading it, I'm not bringing a drink because I need to be able to speak coherently, literally the entire time. I'll have some kombucha. It will be fun. But I do encourage everyone to bring a drink, like get in the chat section, have like that boss fun that we all love, and have a good time while learning about bosses, and to see if the community is a good fit for you.
Yeah, great. Well, I really want to thank you for sharing your experience with our listeners. And I just have one final question for you, especially for our listeners who are thinking about possibly creating their own community. What is one lesson that you've really learned through this process that business owners or nonprofits who want to develop their own online community should know before beginning that process?
The first thing that came to my mind is to have very clear and strong boundaries. I often hear from either people who are just starting communities, they're like, "Oh my God, this is so much work than I ever imagined. Like, why did I get into this?" But also from people who have been in a long time or just very familiar with the industry. I've heard it several times that community managers can be some of the first people to burn out because
Mm-hmm.
so much energy goes into not only creating content, and that's usually part of it, but also holding space for and facilitating conversations between the members of a community. There's a whole lot that goes into that. So, being very clear about what your boundaries are. I don't check my messages after hours or on the weekends, even though sometimes they flash up and I see them and I really want to read and see what's happening. Um, I have people who are helping me for sure. I have facilitators, I have volunteers, I have my team behind the scenes. Like, I have people helping me do it as well. So I'm consistently even, shifting and changing my own boundaries around that to give myself more and more space. Because when I really think about what my role is, and this is part of those boundaries, it is to have the capacity to hold that space. Right. So it's also my responsibility to nurture myself in a way that I can hold that space and fulfill that role that I've given to myself. So boundaries, man, really clear, solid boundaries.
Totally. I think was that a theme one month that we recently went through? I feel like we talk about boundaries a lot though in the
I
community.
mean, that's just like a foundation of being boss.
Yeah, seriously.
Lots of
It
boundaries.
is a fantastic boundary. Well, with that, Emily, I really want to thank you so much. I will make sure that our listeners get a recap of how to follow up with you and how to find out more about the Being Boss community. Both of us, Emily and I, would love to personally invite you to come check out what we've got going on. Well, I'm sorry, what Emily has going on in the
It's all
community.
of us. It's a community. It's all of us together.
Exactly. Yes. So, with that, thank you so much. I hope you have a great holiday. And I just thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. This was fun, Celia.
It is my sincerest hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Rooted in Community podcast as much as I did, and that you feel you have the understanding of what it takes to create your own online community. It's obvious that inviting your audience to join you online can be incredibly rewarding, but it can also be a lot of work. So whatever you do, take time to plan it out. To quote Emily, do the work, be boss. You can find out more about the Being Boss online community at beingboss.ricpodcast.com. You can also listen to the Being Boss podcast on most platforms, and you can visit their website at beingboss.club. More links to Being Boss, Emily, and Almanac Supply Co. can be found in their show notes located at www.ricpodcast.com. The Rooted in Community podcast is brought to you by Modern Roots Marketing, where we believe online marketing should be rooted in community.